Alright, impairment of loans tayo. So bago ang lahat, gusto ko munang pasalamatan lahat ng mga nanonood sa mga video lectures ko. Okay? From the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you. Right? Salamat po sa lahat ng mga magaganda ninyong comment too. Alright? So before we jump into this topic, impairment of loans, or loan impairment, mag-overview muna tayo ng loans receivable. Alright? Itong loans receivable na ito, ay ginagamit ito ng mga bangko or other financial institutions. Itong mga financial institutions like lending companies, okay? Yung mga businesses na ang kanilang nature of business ay pagpapautang. Right? Sila ang gumagamit ng account na loans receivable. So, itong mga bangko and other financial institutions, they are called the lenders. Alright? At ang mga companies or mga taong umuutang, ang tawag sa kanila ay borrowers. Alright? So, sa books ni lenders, sa books ng company or other financial institutions, nire-record nila itong transactions na ito as a loans receivable. So, sa books naman ni borrower, nire-record niya ito as loans payable. Alright? Siyempre, si lenders, magpapautang siya kay borrower, siyempre, meron siyang benefit doon. Yung income niya from the money to the borrower, ang tawag mo dyan ay interest income sa books ni lenders. Alright? Sa books naman ni borrowers, ang tawag mo or charge nila sa interest expense. So, interest expense ni borrower, interest income ni lenders. Alright? So, sa transactions na ito na create ang loans receivable. Siyempre, sa books tayo ng bangko or sa books tayo ni lenders kasi loans receivable ang i-discuss natin. So, kapag nag-discuss tayo ng loans payable, nasa book tayo ni borrower. Alright? In this transaction, itong pagpapautang ni lenders o ng bangko sa mga companies, meron itong kasamang loan agreement. Alright? This loan agreement contains the principal amount of the loan and the interest. So, ano ba itong tinatawag na principal amount? Ang principal amount, this is the amount of the loan granted to the borrower. At ang interest naman, syempre si bangko hindi naman niya magpapahiram kay borrower na wala siyang income dito. So yung income na yon ang tinatawag na interest income. Yung interest na ito, this is an amount or a percentage of the principal charged to the borrower. So itong interest na ito, pwedeng bayaran ng borrower ng annually, pwedeng bayaran niya ng semi-annually, pwede rin niyang bayaran ng monthly or quarterly. So, depende sa agreement nilang dalawa. Alright? So, interest is the amount or the percentage of principal charged to the borrower. Alright? So, let me give you a practice questions on loans receivable. Right. So, ito po yung ating practice questions. So, let's say for example, itong practice questions na ito, meron tayong principal na 2 million. So, the bank granted 2 million loan to a borrower. The borrower will pay a nominal interest rate of 10%. Ang ibig sabihin, 10% of the 2 million babayaran ni borrower. And the life of the loans receivable is 4 years. Then, the interest payment is annually. Let's say, for example, every December 31st, magbabayad si borrower ng interest. So, every December 31st, for 4 years, magbabayad si borrower ng interest. So the grant date natin, January 1st of 2020, we have a principal of 2 million. Alright? Let's say, for example, itong practice questions natin ay lump sum ang payment ni borrower. Ang ibig sabihin, at the end of the life of this loans receivable or on the maturity date, itong principal babayaran na niya. And every year, the borrower will pay an interest to the bank. So si bangko, magre-recognize siya ng interest income. Paano natin i-calculate itong interest income ni bangko? December 31st of 2020, itong 4 na taon na ito, pare-parehas lang ang iyong magiging calculations ng interest income ni bangko. Bakit? Kasi lump sum ito. So, ang ibig sabihin, itong 4 years na ito, ang outstanding loans receivable ni bangko ay 2 million. Then the calculations of your interest income is like this. 2 million multiplied by the 10% nominal interest rate. So, therefore, this is si bangko, kikita siya ng 200,000 interest income sa loan agreement na ito. So, we have interest income. Okay. So, sa interest income na ito, ang entry ng bangko is debit to cash of 200,000 and credit to interest income of 200,000. Okay? So, pare-parehas lang ang magiging entry ng bangko kapag na-receive niya ang 200,000 every year. Alright? So, December 31st, 2020, we debit cash of 200,000 and we credit interest income of 200,000. Ganun din po ang magiging entry niya sa December 31st, 2021 hanggang sa December 31st of 2023. On the maturity date, kapag na-receive na niya yung principal na 2 million from the borrower, the entry will be debit to cash of 2 million and we credit the loans receivable of 2 million. Ito po yung practice question kung saan ang payment ng borrower ay lump sum. Alright? So, paano naman ngayon kapag ang payment ni borrower ay installment? Let's say, for example, we have an equal installment of 500,000 over the 4 years. Paano natin gagawin yon? At magkano ang i-recognize niya as interest income. So, ganito po yan. Alright, ganito naman ang gagawin natin kapag ang problem natin or practice questions natin ay installment bayaran ni borrower. At itong dinidiscuss natin, if not impaired pa, hindi pa ito na-i-impair. Alright? So, dinidiscuss muna natin yung normal na journal entries or normal transactions. Kung hindi ito impaired, ano ang mangyayari sa loans receivable na ito? So, dito naman, kapag ang payment ni borrower ay equal installment, paano natin i-calculate ang interest income ni bangko at ano ang entries natin? Kapag equal in payment naman si borrower ngayon, let's say for example, this 2 million babayaran ni borrower ng tig 500,000 every year. For 4 years, paano natin i-calculate ngayon ang interest income? Let's plug in the payment of our principal amount first, okay? So, paano naman natin kina-calculate ang income kapag meron tayong installment payment at the same time? So, ganito ang pag-calculate natin ng interest income ni bangko. So, from the grant date up to December 31st of 2020, ang outstanding ng loans receivable na ay 2 milyon pa rin. Alright? So, from this year 2020, our computations of our interest income ni bangko is 2 million times the nominal rate of 10%. So, sa taon ng 2020, ang income ni bangko is 200,000. Yan ang interest income ng bangko. Alright? So, our entry on December 31st, 2020, kapag na-receive natin ang interest na 200,000 plus the first installment of 500,000 is debit to cash of 700,000, 500,000 plus the 200,000. Alright? Then, we credit our loans receivable of the first installment of 500,000. So, babawasan natin yung loans receivable natin na 500,000 from that first installment. Then, we credit interest income. of 200,000. Then, pagdating ng December 31st, 2021, ang magiging calculations natin ng interest income this time is, this is year 2021. Ang computations naman natin ngayon sa year 2021 will be 1,500,000. Kasi yan ang outstanding ng loans receivable natin from January 1 of 2021 up to December 31st of 2021. So, 1,500,000 times the nominal interest rate of 10%. Ang income ng bangko sa taon ng 2021 is 150,000. So, ang magiging entry ni bangko is debit to the cash of 500,000 plus 150,000, that is 650,000. So, meron siyang cash na na-receive kay borrower na 650,000. Second installment of 500,000 at yung interest income niya sa taon na ito is only 150,000. Hindi na 200,000. Kasi nagbayad na siya ng isang installment na 500,000. So, ang outstanding sa buong taon na ito is 1,500,000. Yan lang ang magiging basihan mo for interest income ni bangko. So, we debit our cash. I-extend ko na lang dito. We debit our cash of 650,000. And we credit our loans receivable of 500,000. And we credit our interest income of 150,000. Alright? So, interest income pa rin yan. Ito po yung entry natin. Parehas lang sa account na gagamitin natin. Yung amount lang sila nagkakaiba. Pagdating naman ng year 2022, ang magiging basihan na natin ngayon ng interest income ni bangko ay 1,000,000. Bakit 1,000,000? Kasi nagbigay na siya ng another 500,000 installment payment. Multiplied by the nominal interest rate of 10%. So, sa year 2022, ang kinita or interest income ni bangko is 100,000. So, yan ang interest income ni bangko. So, our entry on year 2020 of December 31st is debit to the cash, parehas na account, pero magkaibang amount. Our amount this time on December 31st, 2022 is 100,000 plus our 500,000. So, we have a cash of 600,000. So, we debit our cash of 600,000. And we credit our loans receivable of 500,000 for the third installment. And then our 100,000 interest income. So, ito pa rin yung account na ginagamit natin. Then, pagdating natin sa December 31st, 2023, the last year of our loans receivable, ang magiging basihan natin sa 2023, to calculate our interest income will be 500,000 kasi nagbayad na siya ng 3 installment. So, as of this year, ang outstanding lang sa loans receivable natin ay 500,000. Alright? So, 500,000 multiplied by the 10% na nominal interest rate, we have 50,000. So, the interest income of the bank is 50,000. Alright? So, our entry is magkano yung cash na marireceive natin kay borrower. Yung 500,000 na last installment niya plus yung interest income ni bank of 50,000. The cash na na-receive niya kay borrower ay 550,000. Alright? So, we debit our cash of 550,000. And we credit the loans receivable of 500,000. And we credit the interest income of 50,000. So, pagdating ng January 1, 2024, ang loans natin ay 0 na. Bakit 0? Kasi nagbayad na siya ng equal installment of 500,000 for 4 years. So kung titingnan mo ito, this is equal to your principal amount of 2 million. Ganito po ang ating equal installment kung hindi ito mai-impair. Alright? So, ano ba ang ibig sabihin ng impairment of loans or loan impairment? So, paano nakukonsider ng bangko kung impaired nga itong loans receivable niya kay borrower? Simple lang. Ang ibig sabihin, hindi na matutupad ng borrower ang agreement nila ni lender with regards to the loan. So, maraming pwedeng rason or reasons or pwedeng maging indicator na ang loan ni borrower ay impaired. And the most common reason is when the borrower is experiencing significant financial difficulties. Itong borrower or the company, nahihirapan siyang ibangon ang kanyang business, kaya siya nagkakaroon ng difficulty financially. And another reason is when the borrower will enter into a bankruptcy or other financial reorganizations. Yun ay indicator na ang borrower hindi na niya matutupad ang mga agreement nila ni lender o ni bangko sa loan agreement na yan. Then, the bank will reassess this loans receivable at the end of the year. So, kapag na-reassess naman na ngayon ni bangko at na-impaired na nga itong loans receivable niya kay borrower, ano ang gagawin niya? So remember, itong loan agreement na ito, meron tayong principal at interest sa loan agreement na ito. Alright? So kapag napatunayan na ng bangko na na-impaired na nga itong loans receivable niya kay borrower, ano ngayon ang pwede pang mabayaran ng borrower sa loan agreement na yon? Makakabayad pa kaya siya ng principal? Or makakabayad pa ba kaya siya ng interest? So, the big question is, will the borrower pay principal or interest? So, pwedeng partial na lang ang mababayaran ni borrower sa principal, pwedeng full pa rin na principal ang mababayaran niya. Ang ibig sabihin, babayaran pa rin niya ang bangko sa full amount ng principal. Pero sa interest, pwedeng hindi na siya makakabayad ng interest. So sa interest naman, pwedeng hindi na siya makakabayad ng interest or pwedeng ma-decrease yung interest rate na babayaran ni borrower, yung nominal interest rate. Or pwedeng makakabayad pa siya ng full interest pero partial na lang ang principal. So whatever the case may be, the first thing that you have to know is to determine the date of the cash flow. Magkano pa ba ang pwedeng niyang bayaran si borrower? At ang projected amount sa date na yon. So, remember, we have two kinds of payment. We have the lump sum payment and the installment payment. Sa installment payment naman, meron tayong equal installment at yung isa ay unequal installment. So, from the date of the cash flow and the projected amount, itong amount na ito, imo-multiply natin sa present value factor. Later on, i-discuss ko sa iyo kung bakit natin minomultiply itong future cash flow na ito sa present value pag natapos na natin yung impairment of loan. So, ano itong present value at anong present value ang gagamitin natin? Okay? Let's put it here. Alright, so i-multiply natin itong ating projected amount or the date of the cash flow from the present value factor. Alright, kapag ang mababayaran lang ng borrower is lump sum, ang ibig sabihin on the maturity date, tsaka ka lang niya babayaran, yung projected amount na yon, i-multiply mo dito sa present value of 1 at original effective interest rate for the remaining period. Let's say, for example, meron tayong 5 years na loans receivable. And on the third year, nagkaroon ng financial difficulties si borrower. On the third year, magre-recognize si bangko ng impairment law. And then, yung remaining 2 years ng life ng loans receivable na yon, ay ito'y po yan. for remaining period. Date of the cash flow naman ay installment at ito ay equal installment. Kukunin mo lang yung isang installment payment niya, i-multiply mo yon dito sa present value of ordinary annuity at original effective interest rate for the remaining period. Alright? Tapos, kung ito naman ay unequal installment, kukunin mo lang yung projected amount for each day. Then, you are going to multiply that from the present value of 1 at original effective interest rate for period 1, period 2, at period 3. So, kapag equal installment, ito ang gagamitin mo. Alright? Kapag unequal installment naman, ito naman ang gagamitin mo. Kung lump sum na ngayon ang pwedeng bayaran ni borrower, then ito naman ang gagamitin mo. So, paano nga ba natin nako-compute, nakakalculate ang impairment loss ng bangko? So, ganito ang pag-calculate natin ng impairment loss or loan impairment loss. So, if impaired, ang una natin gagawin is ang una natin gagawin kapag impaired na confirm na ng bangko na impaired na nga itong loans receivable niya kay borrower, we have to determine first the carrying amount of your loans receivable. So, kailangan natin ma-determine kung magkano ang carrying amount ng loans receivable na ito ni bangko. At sa pag-determine ng carrying amount of the loans receivable, mag-uumpisa tayo sa principal amount. Yung principal amount ng loans na ito. And then, from the principal amount, i-add po natin ang tinatawag na accrued interest receivable. So, ano ba itong principal amount? The principal amount, ito po yung amount na grant ni lender, ni bangko, kay borrower na utang niya. Ano naman itong accrued interest? Ito po yung interest income ng bangko na na-earn na niya pero hindi pa niya ito nare-receive sa borrower. Let's say, for example, nagbabayad si borrower ng interest kay bangko ng June 1 and January 1, semi-annually. So, sa June 1, hindi siya nakabayad, pero in-accrue ito ng bangko. Kasi hindi pa niya alam na mai-impair yung loans receivable niya. Na-earn niya ng interest before niya nalaman na hindi na makakabayad si borrower, na na-accrue na niya. Yan ay kasama sa accrued interest receivable. So, ito yung mga interest na na-earn na niya pero hindi pa niya nare-receive sa borrower. Alright? At na-record na niya. Kapag hindi pa niya nare-record, hindi natin isasama. Yung mga na-record niya na accrued interest receivable, yun lang ang kasama sa carrying amount ng loans receivable. Alright? Then, the principal amount, add our accrued interest receivable. This is your carrying amount of the loans receivable. Then, after we determined the carrying amount of the loans receivable, titingnan naman natin ngayon kung magkano ang projected amount of the cash flows. So, magkano pa ba ang pwede niyang bayaran? So, magkano pa ba ang pwedeng bayaran ni borrower? Yan ang tinatawag na projected future cash flows. Sa projected future cash flow, remember, imo-multiply natin ito sa present value factor. Alright, so yung projected future cash flow, imo-multiply natin yan sa present value factor. So, na-discuss ko na sa'yo, you have to determine kung lump sum, equal installment, or unequal installment. So, alam mo kung anong present value factor ang gagamitin mo. Alright? Then, from the projected future cash flow, ito na nga po yung nakuha nating present value of all future cash flows. Makukuha natin yung present value of all future cash flows by multiplying this to the present value factor. So, ito yung present value of all future cash flows. Then, kapag nakuha na natin ito, makukompute na po natin ang ating impairment loss. Alright? Sa pag-calculate naman ng impairment loss, ay ganito po yan. Yung carrying amount na nakuha natin dito minus your present value of the future cash flow, yan po ang impairment loss natin. So, itong impairment loss is calculated as the carrying amount of the loans receivable minus our present value of all future cash flows. Ito na po yung ating impairment loss. Alright? So, ganito po yung pag-compute or pag-calculate ng impairment loss natin. Alright? If impaired, na-confirm na ng bangko na na-impair na nga po ang kanyang loans receivable, the very first thing that you have to do as an accountant or calculate as an accountant to know what is the carrying amount of the loans receivable. So, bago mo makuha ang impairment loss, kailangan mo munang alamin kung magkano ang carrying value ng loans receivable na yan. Alright? And the carrying amount of the loans receivable is calculated, mag-uumpisa ka sa principal amount. You add the accrued interest receivable, yung recorded lang. Then, you will end up with the carrying amount of the loans receivable. Dito naman, you have to determine the projected future cash flow. Yung future cash flow, ito po yung magkano na lang ang pwedeng bayaran ni borrower. Alright? Usually, this one is given in your problem. So, yung projected amount na yan, multiplied by the present value, makukuha mo yung present value ng lahat ng future cash flows. Then, kapag na-determine mo na ito, then pwede ka nang mag-calculate ng impairment loss. The impairment loss is calculated, you have to start with the carrying amount of the loans receivable na nakuha mo dito. Then, you less the present value of all the future cash flows. Then, kapag nakuha mo na ngayon ang impairment loss mo, paano mo siya i-record? Nire-record po natin ang impairment loss na ito. Meron tayong dalawang method sa pag-record ng impairment loss. And these are the direct methods and the allowance method. So, ang gagawin ko dito is, i-column ko siya, then I will write down all the transactions. Ilalagay natin yung entry using the direct method. At ilalagay din natin dito ang entry using the allowance method. So, makikita mo side by side ang entries ng bawat method na ito. Alright? And then dito sa last column will be the financial statement presentation. Paano natin i-present itong loans receivable na ito at itong impairment loss. Alright, dahil masyadong mahaba na itong loan impairment natin, gagawin ko is I will divide this video lectures into two parts. Our loan impairment part 1 and loan impairment part 2. Alright? So, itong loan impairment part 1 is just an overview of how to calculate for the impairment loss. So, part 2 naman, ang gagawin natin, magbibigay ako ng practice questions. Then, ang gagawin natin, i-journalize natin yung practice questions na yon from the grant date up to the time na na-impair na yung loans receivable ni bangko up to the last cash flow ng lender, up to the last payment of the borrower. I'll see you loan impairment part 2.